next month or what. Those points, I think I would be remiss if I didn't speak out on those points for my district. Those are my concerns about it. So at that point, we'll
All
back
right.
around Mr. Anderson.
Well, a couple of things. If we have a public hearing, there is no action that has to be taken the night of the public hearing. As I understood Mr. Durbin to say, it could be tabled if there was further questions from the board. So the public hearing is more of a process to hear from the community, to hear what they actually want. And the idea to move this to December is to thwart that, because you guys know, as well as I do, the majority of this county want this. So that's number one. Number two, as far as enforcement goes, I had talked to the sheriff. He had done some federal enforcement on the parks in that area, got some funding as a result of that. I asked him about this. He said he would look at it. If there was any way he could, he would enforce it, depending on how it's written, etc. He supports this.
Right?
He doesn't know what process. He was going to meet and see, and I invited him to come to our next, if we have another closed session as a result of that. And he said he supports this fully 100%. So to pull the fast one here and try to put it off to December, you talk about political theater. That's what this is right here. That's political theater.
That's what it's been the whole time.
Yeah, that's what you are afraid of, because you don't really want to know what the majority of the people.
I'm not afraid of a damn.
I think this is my time. I think I had to shut up. I think it's my time. When we hear about political theater. That's what this is right here. By pulling the fast one here, had the motion already, all this planned out to move this to December. Overwhelming majority of these people want this. And to say that we haven't had time to look at it or see it, well, how is it that we've gotten letters that threatening letters that we're going to be sued, quoting what the ordinance says? That's mind-boggling to me if we haven't had time to see it or look at it, because we've had it for over 2 months. So people out in the community that's writing threatening letters obviously know what's in the ordinance. So to keep stalling this out is a pretty cunning and slick move. And I think it's really denying the majority of the citizens in this county what they desire, is to take a stand for pro-life. And I understand if you don't want to take a stand for it, but that's not representing Grayson County. And every district in here, for the majority of them, support this. And this ordinance was written based on Virginia and federal law. So, anyway.
Just one other comment is that the ordinance we're talking about is the ordinance that was drafted by a third party. The ordinance that is available, potentially available, is that ordinance drafted by a third party. We do not have an ordinance drafted by our county attorney, which is the process. As it's been brought up, the sheriff supports the concept but hasn't read the ordinance, and therefore he hasn't been able to do an assessment on it. Commonwealth attorney may need to weigh in, who knows? But there's every argument that's being made is an argument for additional time for the county to do what the county needs to do. And there is no pressing need to hold the public hearing at this point when we haven't done the due diligence required that we do in every other ordinance that we've developed since I've been on board. So that's the argument. There's a lot of forces at play that are way bigger than Grayson County. And I just don't think that we need to be in a position any sooner than we need to be in that position. And that's why December 2023 made a lot of sense to me. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Anything else from you?
So I think the sheriff has requested a copy of the ordinance. I'm not sure Linda may.
I'm not saying you haven't.
So he's been reviewing it. So we had a meeting and we voted to have a public hearing. We had discussion with our attorney. Our attorney has reviewed this thing. I think, at least according to the closed session, he's went through it pretty much with a fine-tooth comb. We have a letter of support in the event that there is litigation. He was gonna firm that up, get something more on that. All that could be done in a reasonable time, but to put it off to December is beyond ridiculous. I mean, we can do July, we can do whatever, but stretching it out that far is just ridiculous.
I think we've had discussion, so at this time, Chair will ask for a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay. What was the count?
Aye.
Who's that?
So we will have a public hearing in December.
Do we have a specific date in December?
We'll do on the regular monthly.
December, I can modify the motion, but it's, the assumption was that December board meeting.
Okay.
we normally do.
What is it? December 14th.
Okay. Which brings us to resolution. VDOT second-year, 6-year road plan.
I'm sorry, I was thinking about something else.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, as we do each year, we have the second year road plan, the resolution, and then each road that the board picks is represented by a resolution. And so that's what you have. And this year's resolution is Route 634 Longview Lane, 1 mile of that. And I might add, the end of existing pavement to the end of state maintenance will be built under rural rustic process and finished with hard surface. Should it be designated as rural rustic lane. And so that's the resolution for Longview Lane, 1 mile. We have 1 mile, 1.5 mile, the other 0.5. The board, I think, desires to do Moortown Lane, which is 0.5 miles from the intersection of Route 644 to the end of the state maintenance by the same procedure, the rural rustic procedure. I'll be happy to read any or all of the resolutions, but that is the gist of the resolutions in the 1.5 miles. Yeah, that's the one I was referring to, the 6-year road plan is the same as always, every year adopted in.
Mr. Chair, make a motion, we suspend the reading of the resolution.
Okay, for a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Chair also aye. Okay.
Mr. Chair, one point on this thing though, we're discussing briefly in the prior to the meeting starting is kind of going backwards on the number of miles that we're getting to do secondary road improvement with. We used to be kind of 2 miles, now it's 1.5, and I know the reason why. I think we need to engage our legislators, and if it means we do a resolution, and solicit other rural counties, maybe work it through the rural caucus, but we need more money, not less. We need more miles, not less miles in the secondary road 6-year plan. We got a lot of problems in Grayson that need to be addressed. We're not going to get there going from 2 miles to 1.5.
All right, then the chair will ask for a roll call vote on the resolution to adopt the VDOT secondary 6-year road plan as described in the resolution. Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Fan? Aye. Mr. Ivy? Aye. Mr. Belton? Aye. Chair also aye.
It's a notification process. We notify residents when we just post it.
Actually, we'll go into the road plan, 6-year road plan now.
Yep.
At this point, Ms. Alderman takes these resolutions and sends them back signed to the BOS system. And next year, they will clear it out.
Okay.
Sheriff, that's a question. At the last meeting, I asked about Saddle Creek Road. Did we add any roads to the 6-year plan or just discuss? And the process of adding a road to the 6-year plan, have we missed that window to do that?
The way I understand it is Mr. Fowler, those roads that were mentioned, he goes back, critiques and sees if they meet the rural rustic standard. And
Saddle Creek did. I asked that question during the meeting.
then that will become the road next year that should be on that you all can choose from.
Do you mind confirming that, just to make sure? I had a couple of citizens on Saddle Creek Road reach out, and I want to make sure I'm reporting back at it. I think it was 0.8 of a mile that was eligible for the rustic rural.
Just so we're clear though, my experience is just by bringing it up doesn't get it on the 6-year plan.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, it's not on the 6-year plan.
No.
Longview and Morgantown got added. They're officially now on the 6-year plan. So Saddle Creek could be under consideration later. And I think a lot of the comments we heard the other night were that say, I used to be on the 6-year plan and now I'm not. My understanding from back in the day was that people would say, yeah, we'll put it to the 6-year plan, but there were no resources added to it. And so they thought it was on the plan, but it was never on the plan because there were no resources that were allocated. Now what happens is that resources are allocated to the roads that we vote on. So those 2 roads are now officially on the 6-year plan, but they're not going to get paid till 2029.
So
Yeah. And I still am not clear on, are we taking a gap year or how does that work? Because we took all the money for what is now the 5th year, moved it forward to pay for the roads 1 through 4. So now what? Or is it really a 5-year plan now?
when I talked to Mr. Fowler about making sure that Mr. Supervisor Fence is exactly right. That road will be added for,
Next year.
well, it'll be added for
On the plan
routes
next
that you guys can pick, the board can pick
Okay.
from. It'll be that, but it's not on the 6-year plan until the board does exactly what they did today with Longview and Morgantown.
Better way,
Help me, I'm sorry.
a better way to think about it. If Andy says it's eligible, it's now eligible for that, for the
For the
rural
discussion.
rustic plan.
Yeah.
Which is what the secondary 6-year plan is for.
And that's what he should
It
do.
qualifies as rural rustic.
Okay.
He'll do that based on your conversation with him. He'll go back and he'll
Put that on the
and he'll-
discussion for
He'll
next
put
year.
that on discussion next year, and when we say, hey, we need to approve this for the board to look at, it should be on there, and I'll confirm that.
So when I follow back with a person, the people on Saddle Creek Road, I'll link the 2 of y'all out just to make sure I'm not misleading them.
I'll find out, I'll confirm that, and I'll also ask about that gap, because I think you're exactly right. There'll be a gap here.
Okay, and we're on the roads. Now we'll move on to the budget work session. And that will be under the,
Oh, was that under budget?
yeah, under the,
We're ready, man.
okay.
Oh, okay, sorry, I got it framed out.
Yeah, frame it out.
So Tracy was not here last time, right?
I wasn't here.
Okay, so the discussion started, trying to do just a frame thought here. Discussion started on where we were with the budget. There were some pieces in there I think that we need to make decisions on. We started with the discussion of whether to keep the vehicle license fee and designate towards something specific. Fans talked about that. Brantley, Ms. Ivy brought up, well, if we decide to do away with that, is there a thought to increase our personal property tax? What would that cost? I had some concerns about us not investing. I thought we were investing well in capital improvement projects for the school, but maybe not so much for the county, with some of the things that we have coming up. And if we were going to reduce that revenue, then we would maybe have to make some decisions, harder decisions on other projects. And so with the budget we have today, we need to decide whether to either take out that vehicle license tax completely and increase personal property revenue. Mr. Bolt can kind of walk us through some of the thoughts on that, or take it out and leave personal property tax exactly where it's at. If we do that, then we have to probably go back to the drawing board tonight and make some decisions on that $418,000. Is that correct? We also left in there for discussion. We had 2 positions to EMS that are left in there at this point. So we need to discuss yay or nay on those 2 positions. And you all asked me for some homework on a part-time position for PSA and a full-time position for the registrar's office. Any other pieces that I'm missing in there that just broad pieces that I need to think about tonight?
Those are the broad pieces.
Those are the broad pieces. Okay. And it's the idea we're going to go through. You're going to brief us kind of where we're at right now, right?
Yes.
But those, just have those on the forefront of your brain as what you think we really want to do. Those are all the biggest discussion points I think we get. Does that sound right?
Okay, yeah, so
Yeah, of course.
that sounds like a summary of the meeting,
Yeah.
which I apologize for not being here. And I watched the majority of it online. I didn't get to see the whole thing. So if I could at least voice my opinion on a couple of these things, as I took some notes as we went through here. And so the discussion is to do away with the fee, and I thought Brantley kind of nailed it with the car assessments are still high, and I guess Mr. Bolt will be able to confirm some more actuality on that. So if we do away with the fee, but if we raise the tax somewhere else to make it up, we're not giving the taxpayers a break if we do that. That was one of the things, and I know there was some discussion about renaming it or reterming it and the history of it. Well, the history of it was presented to the community that we're going to have a sticker fee and help pay for school buses. You know, once we get that, then we'll do away with it. It was a temporary fix at the time, which has gone on for years and years and years. Just a little history as I understand it, and you guys are welcome to correct me if I'm wrong. So to regain that somewhere else, I'm not in favor of that. I mean, if we're going to help the people, we're going to have to cut it. I know there was some discussion too about how last year we got into a little bit of a pickle because the car assessments were so high. We had to go back and we had to issue refunds to help folks out. That discussion, we beat that around a while last year, and finally we were able to do that at the main meeting, and there was some jimmying and jockeying around on that. So in that budget, there was monies dedicated to the Baylor project. I think it was 2 cents or 1 cent. Do you know for sure which?
1 cent, right?
2. It was 2 cents, which translates to.
I think we have about 300 in that fund right now. So
In the
about
fund.
300.
Each cent's worth what?
188,000
Roughly
Roughly
188,000.
Ish in that.
Okay.
based on current.
So,
real estate values.
and this will lead me towards some of the questions I would have for staff. Is that included in this current budget that was determined? Okay.
Nor
So,
wasn't included in fiscal year 23.
23.
okay. So I heard other discussion too, as I watched, about fairness, and 80% of the landowners pay the taxes, and 20% that was geared towards the $25 fee. I think in the discussion, that's the only way we get their fair share, I think was the terms used. But I would suggest that those folks that may not own property but live in the county pay rent which in essence goes toward paying, that landowner paying the taxes on whether it's their apartments or houses or whatever it is they're renting. So that was one thing. And then in the light of fairness, we lowered the levy last year. Was it 59 cents to 54? 59 to 54. So we went down 5 cents on the levy. The real estate values, as everybody has noted, went up, but the land did not go up. Just the houses, lots, etc. I think maybe some land maybe near the river might have seen an increase. So large landowners last year saw a significant tax cut, which I thought was fair. But so the fairness issue keeps coming up in the discussion. So they saw a huge tax increase or decrease rather last year. So in the light of fairness. So all I'm saying is, I thought last year we had resolved this. We're going to do away with the $25 car fee. I hope we can stay in those lines. The budget for the EDA was mentioned. I think, help me out with the figures on that we put in there last year.
What's the-
FY 23,
Yeah.
290,000.
300,000.
So in there now is about 800,000
Roughly unencumbered. yes.
unencumbered, it's about 800,000.
Okay, so and let's make no mistake about it, the EDA is another term for the county. I mean, that's a county-funded organization. However, once we fund it, we have no control or say over what they do with it. We only have control or say over who we appoint, not how they spend it. They have their own authority to do that. So I didn't hear any, and if I may have not got to saw the whole thing, so you guys feel free to correct me, I'm not gonna be offended. But I didn't hear a lot of talk about cuts or anything of that nature in the discussion. It's always expansion and adding services, and we're getting into, projects and things that we just seem like we can't get out of, or we're having a hard time, and it's taking years to get out of. And whether that's mismanagement, lack of planning, or what, COVID, we can just blame everything on COVID, I guess. So, which leads me to another question. And I heard one of my colleagues say, we were at the grant meeting discussing the Elk Creek building project, that would impact the levy. Is that going to impact is it going to impact the levy?
Oh.
The Elk Creek project.
There's been no discussion on increasing the levy to the Elk Creek project that I'm aware of.
Is there an Elk Creek project?
But we've not been,
I ain't heard of one. I mean,
nobody's.
Well, I saw you at one of the meetings, talking about at the building. We were at Freeze, we had meetings all over the county.
yeah, but has anybody ever come forward and say, this is the vision? That's what I'm saying, because at that point, they were doing surveys and who had done how many surveys it done. But I ain't seen nobody come up here and say, this is the project, this is what we're after, this is.
Have we seen the results of the survey?
I have. That's what I'm asking. I'm asking you.
No, I haven't, but we had meetings all over the county. It created a bit of stir, a bit of political theater, if you will, because it's another project that we can't seem to fund. And then who's involved, who's the stakeholders, people's not allowed in meetings to hear what's going on, and it goes on and on. So if that's going to impact the levy, the citizens of this county need to know about it, and they need to know what's going on. And if we have county employees going around to these meetings and promoting this as representatives of the county, I think we need to get a grip on that.
Okay, Mr. Frank?
Yeah, on the Elk Creek project, quick update. The EDA help fund the survey. It's still being worked through. The big holdup for the survey is complete, but the business plan that the consultant was helping with was reliant on the folks that were interested in the project that helped kind of bring it to light, coming up with an organizational structure. They've done that. It's a representative of the fire department, the representative from Healing, Hands of Grace, and a representative from the nonprofit fair committee. Those are the three people. They got the organization. Everybody else involved is on the advisory committee. There's no county employee part of the decision-making body of that organization. And so now they're waiting to finish up the business plan, and then figure out the next step of how they're gonna do design and then fundraise. So there is no budget request from that organization, as I understand it, because they don't have the plans detailed enough on the process. And their last conversation I was in, the last meeting I attended, when they decided that was the organization they were going to go with, their intent is to fundraise and work with grants and other things to be able to get that money. The project, the concept is still out there to try to work with the fire department to do something Mill Creek for the benefit of the county, but it's going to be looks like a nonprofit sort of organization stood up to make that happen.
So in light of that update, and thanks, Mr. Fant, for the update. The EDA paid, as I understand, they paid for the survey. Was that not a $14,000 investment or a $10,000 investment in the survey? Somebody help me out here.
10,000, I recall.
So there's 10,000. Last year, we had the Baywood project going on. I think we paid, even though that got tabled and shuffled around and it's back to the drawing board. I think we probably spent 40-some thousand on the Baywood project.
I don't have those numbers in front of me. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's somewhere in that neighborhood, 40-some thousand. So my point to all this, right there is just 50,000 off the top of my head. So my point to all this is we need to talk about cuts and being frugal and spending the monies appropriately. I mean, we hired a group to come in here and help us figure out our comprehensive plan. I think the citizens and the staff in this county can figure out a comprehensive plan, and that was probably another 30,000. I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong. What did we spend on the?
I'll have to go get another.
Okay, that's okay.
I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I'll
No,
have to go get more information.
That's okay, but we had the Berkeley group come in and help us, if I'm not mistaken, figure out our 5-year comprehensive
From the planning commission.
So that, the planning commission paid for that as well. Well, when we say, but they helped the planning commission, but we paid them to do so. And I'm sure if I kept going, there's more and more. So my point to all that is I'd like to hear something where we're being cut, we're tightening up, because we've got great ideas all over the county. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but we're throwing a little bit of money here and there at all these different things, and that quickly adds up. The second thing that brings me to is how much are we allocating these organizations that come in here and ask us for they have their asks. Do we have a list of those? Was that in discussion last week? And again, I apologize for not being here, but 3 o'clock's really difficult.
Sure. We went through that entire list of every organization that asked for money. I think twice we went through that. In some places, we had reduced those requests. I don't remember of any increases in the requests that were made. I think there was only reductions in the request. You asked about the EDA as well. We did not fund the EDA for this budget year.
Okay.
And just to kind of I don't want to take it back too far, but just get back a little bit to the discussion of last week was, sometimes it's hard to hear, I know on our channel, but it kind of, when we're talking about fairness, I think there was about 20% of our citizens are renters. And if we take out this vehicle tax, it's one of the few, I think Mr. Bell's point was, it's one of the few ways that we can contribute to the services. I get the rent discussion as well, but it's one of the few ways that they are able to contribute to the sheriff's department, the schools, the things that, they may be utilizing as well. And so that was kind of the back and forth. I was trying to just frame the different pieces of the discussion
Right.
between everybody.
Well, in light of that, I understand, I think, where Mr. Bell is coming from. And he can chime in if he chooses, but it's no different than someone leases a farm so that landowner has the ability to pay the taxes. And, there was some discussion about down the road we may have to increase the levy and whatnot.
I think that my discussion was on the financial forecast. I apologize if I interrupted you. The financial forecast that we had, I don't have it.
Is that the new financial forecast?
Last year's financial forecast that was produced. Yeah, and it calls for a significant increase of the levy in, 26.
Yeah, right.
It's 26, 3 years from now, up to 67 cents, which is a significant increase. So if we decide to take away certain taxes now, I think we need to start talking about decisions we need to make towards either cost, whether it's the school cost, school budget is probably 35% of our budget, or whether it's the sheriff's or whatever it is, we want to make some decisions on how we want to lower our costs, because inflation is at a 4-year high where everything seems to be rising on us.
Right.
So how do we do that?
I get the idea that every year things are getting more expensive. I get that. I think in the financial forecast, it was based on if the projects and plans that we have in place. In order to fund those, we're going to be looking at this increase. I don't know that the financial forecast suggested rethinking some things and cutting out some things or that. And I just think that needs to be a part of the conversation as well.
As we go into consideration, since we have Mr. Bolt here, would you like to maybe give us a
Okay.
snapshot of what you see by doing those adjustments?
Okay, and so if we're talking about the vehicle license fee, and obviously if you do away with it, this on vehicles $25, motorcycles $15. So if you do away with it, people would save $25 per each vehicle. I was brought in to say, okay, we want to do away with the license fee, but what would the personal property rate have to be adjusted to make up that same amount of dollars? And we're talking about somewhere between $410,000, $415,000. Okay. And I know sometimes, and Lisa, you can help me here. When we're looking at the budget and the numbers we have, there's one line that says personal property.
Yes, sir.
Correct. And roughly it was 3.9 million.
Would you like me to pull it up for you?
Sure. But roughly $3.9 million, 3.9 million. One bottom line. Now, in reality, there's like 15 different line items making up that one, 15 categories that we have personal property broken out in that aspect. The big one is the cars. Okay. That gets the vehicle license. But there's 15 different ones. Included in that is your machinery and tool tax, which has a different levy. Your merchant's capital tax, which has a different levy, and your mobile homes, which has a different levy. Then that's 3 of the 15, and that leaves 12 other categories that has the $2.25 levy. Okay, which also includes the four of the category that gets the vehicle license fee, which is, and these are our numbers, but it's 01s, which are the cars, 02s, which are the larger trucks, 05, which are the motorcycles, and 15, which is the RV campers. Those are the 4 of the 15 that actually gets a vehicle license fee. But if you were talking about adjusting the rate, the 225 rate, you'd be talking about adjusting on the 12 categories, which would include trailers, boats, campers, business equipment, and everything like that. So when you take the value of those categories, and it's like $177,696,596. And what that means is that if you were to raise that one penny would bring you $17,770. So 1 penny on personal property is $17,770. Okay, and I think number I used is $410,000. So to get $410,000 made up at 1 penny at a time, then 17,770, that would be an additional 23 cents on all those other 12 categories. So that would be an increase from $2.25 to $2.48. The 23 cents. So I thought maybe your next question would be, well, what does that do to cars in terms of value of my car? So I have a little handout for you. Lisa, you go. Okay.
Sure.
Claire.
Everybody's school teacher.
Yeah, that's exactly right amount, same thing. This is entitled 225 versus 248. Down the left-hand side is the value of the vehicles. You see, I started the first one at $70,000. And I worked its way down, and I think Mr. Boyer said one day, you mean we have vehicles valued $70,000? And yes, there are some. And then that goes all the way down to $500. So if we just take the 70,000 to start, just so you will make sure we understand the chart here. The first going horizontal, the 225 levy, which would be this year's tax, was $1,575. The PPTRA, the state car tax relief, was $76 off. So the tax on that vehicle was $1,499. Then they bought a $25 license fee, and that made the amount $1,524 that they actually paid on the car and the license fee. If you increase the levy to 248, the original tax would be $1,736 minus the car tax relief, $1,660. So they'd be paying $1,660 compared to $1,524. What they would have paid same value vehicle this year. So actually their taxes would go up $136 on that. Now, if you work your way down to a $30,000 vehicle, for example, and there's lots of $30,000 vehicles out there. You go all the way over to the end, you'll see that would be an increase of $44 if the personal property rate was raised to 248. Comes on down to $10,000 vehicle, when it works its way over, that would actually be a decrease of $2. And then the back page goes all the way down to the $1,000 vehicles. Like the $1,000 vehicles would have a decrease of $22.70. The $500 vehicles would have a decrease of $23.85. The higher end vehicles would be paying more. The lower end vehicles would be paying less.
Is the 30, is that kind of the middle of the road for what we have? Or is that, or do you have any
I don't know.
idea?
I mean, I just know, I think there's a lot of $30,000 cars out here. Look through parking lots. But we have a lot of $500 cars too. We don't have a lot of $70,000 vehicles, obviously. But we do have some. But there's a lot from, 20 to 25, 30, 35, $40,000 vehicles. Any questions on my handout? Everybody understands what we're doing here. And I was just asked okay, if you do away with it, but we try to increase it there. Now, something else to consider. So let's say that, I don't know, maybe I've got a $20,000 vehicle, okay? And when I look at mine, if we increase it up, that's going to be me paying $21 more on that. If I've got a $5,000 trailer pulled behind that truck sometimes, that's going to add $11.50 more to it. got a camper that I use that's valued $10,000, that would add $23 to my tax bill because of the increase there.
On this $70,000 vehicle,
Yes, sir.
in my opinion, my deal, I've got two vehicles, it's gonna be over 70,000. My pay split total.
Right.
Am I to pay 2 times 136?
I would go back and, so you're adding the total value of all your vehicles?
Total value, it would be just 136, correct?
Yeah. I mean, I would want to look at each.
You're saying per
individual.
vehicle.
It's per vehicle.
Per vehicle. Yeah, per vehicle.
Right.
So
Would
maybe
be the-
take, hey, what if we take a $30,000 and a $40,000 vehicle?
So you pay
Because that would get you to a 70. On the 40, you'd have $67 more, and a 30,000, you'd have a $44. So that'd be,
So in essence,
yeah, I don't think you need to add total volume
okay,
vehicles.
I got you.
You need to look at each individual vehicle.
But back to my point of being fired. If somebody's got 2 vehicles, or even, we have some complaints about people buying new trucks, and they were $85,000 because I looked at them. An $85,000 truck, he's gonna pay more for his sticker than somebody that's got a $1,000 vehicle. Will pay less. That to me is sharing the wealth.
I mean, if you raise the levy on all of that, the higher dollar amount you have will obviously come out.
Right. And that's what my thing about being fired is, even though this guy that owns a $70,000 vehicle, or he rents or where he owns his own land, is paying more for somebody that don't have, paying his part of fire rescue, sheriff's department, schools. What I'm getting.
I mean, when you look at like the $500 vehicle, that's gonna be a $23.85 decrease, which is almost a $25. They're almost like getting rid of that whole $25 for me. That's on the $500 vehicle. $500 vehicle.
So the 48 cents, going from 25 cents to 48 cents, was that an effort to recoup the 415?
That's the effort to recoup the money if we do away with the vehicle license fee. To get I think I used 410,000.
Because if then it's not doing away with the fee is not helping the taxpayers. If we increase the levy, just to say, we simplified the budget, we simplified that, we did away with the fee, and then we're gonna increase the levy to make up the difference. We've not done any favors to the taxpayers. And
I think maybe a lot of taxpayers might think you was doing a disfavor
yeah, if we increase the levy, definitely.
based on the more you'd be paying on your cars. I mean, the break-even point on one car is, roughly $10,000 value vehicle. If you had higher than that, you'd be paying more, less than that, you'd be paying less. Where do which side do you follow?
I mean, I don't know that there's any way to do anything in government that's fair to everybody. And usually we're providing services and a lot of cases trying to help people get from one thing to the other. But the fairness argument, I just don't see the class warfare. Obviously somebody has a $70,000 truck. They've got means that somebody that's driving a $500 car may not have typically. I don't know that I agree with that argument. So are we at the point to where we're trying to decide if we do away with the car fee, then we have to increase the levy on personal property, is that where we are?
So you have to decide if you want to do away with the car fee, are you going to increase personal property tax to make a, if you're not going to do either, then we need to go tonight and go, where's that 450 going to come from? And we'll probably need to give you some options on that.
Yes.
Yeah. What are we saying no to? Are we going to say no to these two EMS folks? That's 150. Are we going to say no to some other, we'll have to give you some other options? Things like that.
What about?
Well, hold on, let me open it up for any comments before we come back.
The same two EMS positions that we talked about, so we get the 24-hour day. Quick response vehicle that still hasn't gotten here.
I do. It got here this week.
Oh, it did?
It is here.
Start collecting data now.
So we're looking at,
Hold on.
I'm done.
No, I'll express my point that, I'm never gonna agree with taking away from somebody that has something to give it to somebody that don't want nothing or don't have nothing. That's what Biden does. I mean, hey, take away from somebody that's worked their ass off to get and give it to somebody that's out here and don't give a crap whether they got anything or not. I'm not gonna agree with that.
and I don't disagree with that.
So part of the discussion though is, that my recall was, ultimately this discussion is about revenue versus expenditure, right?
Yes.
And in my mind, yeah, this year we got coming up, we got to get the budget passed, but there's also some things in the 2nd through 5 years that we need to also appreciate, because what worries me is how we're going to pay for, the potential, if we add these two people, that's 100, what'd you say it was?
50, right?
150 something $1,000.
Am I right on that?
That's a little high.
Is that the best investment of that 150K at this point in time? We know we have a 911 system that they're talking about, although it's, we don't have a firm number on that. We know that.
6 million.
Huh?
6 million is what the initial assessment.
Yeah. We know we need some vertical infrastructure to support both 911 and potential cellular and other stuff. So there's some capital improvement stuff. The thought I had with the vehicle tax, to what Tracy brought up a little while ago, is, it was originally for the school buses. If you go back and designate that money to go fund the capital improvement fund that we've set up for the school system as a means to fund that as a designated funding line. Whether you call it that or you call it something else, it's still a revenue, right? So ultimately, it comes down to if we're not comfortable with understanding where we're at right now in revenue, but appreciating where we're going to go with potential outlays in the future based on stuff we can't control and stuff that we know we need to do, then it ultimately comes back to what services do you want to stop doing. And that's where I think the point is. My head is, we're making some investments and we know we've got to make some investments. And that's kind of where I'm at on this thing. I think we could use that license fee and designate it clearly to fund the schools, partially fund the school's capital improvement program. But that's gonna that doesn't change the overall revenue take, right? That keeps the revenue as it is right now. It just designates that back to the purpose it originally was put on that for. And then I think there's some things that we could do, again, we talked about those two positions for EMS. We talked about fleshing out the one position this year to collect some data on it, not adding the two positions, which then takes $150K that can be applied to something else. It's kind of where I'm at on the I'm not in favor of, adjusting the levy up. But it seems to me, knowing what the future, what we can anticipate with the future, it seems like there are some projected expenses we could reduce while maintaining our revenue, which gives us some little operational flexibility going forward in the next year and the year following.
Yeah, so tying the $25 fee back to the schools, so we can, I guess, in essence, hold some of their CIP money hostage and say, well, we cut that $25 car fee because that was originally for the buses. That's not been earmarked for the schools for 20+ years. I mean, a couple of years after it was implemented, and it was a temporary thing. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but, that's not true.
Okay, help me out.
It's been within my time here that we did dedicate that money.
To school buses?
To schools, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
How-
it's gone back and forth multiple times.
Well, you've been here 20 years.
No, I've only been here, in this position, I've only been here 12, but I don't want you to misstate that.
Okay.
So it has gone back and forth
So how-
between being dedicated and not being dedicated. It was
Where
at
is
the
it
pleasure
now?
of the board. It is not dedicated.
So it's not dedicated and it's not been used for school buses, which is the original intent. So I don't think we should even, I don't know why we're having a conversation on the $25 fee and trying to tie that back to the school CIP funds. There again, I don't think that's fair. It's to the schools. If we're wanting to cut it to help the people out, then let's do that. And the issue of fairness keeps coming up. Well, we have folks paying trash fees that don't receive that service, and they're required by law to pay that, or they'll go and issue a summons, if I'm not correct, and have to go to civil court, I guess it is, for not paying for something they're not receiving. That's not fair, and that's happening all over the county. And that's a separate issue for a separate day, but I know the issue of fairness is never going to go away beyond all of us. But we can do away with the car fee. We could look at potentially, we're looking at 2 EMS positions. I mean, last year we put one in place with the idea that this year we may put another. If we got at least one of those, I think we would be moving in the right direction. And we just got the vehicle. And there's some other programs and stuff that maybe we should look at trimming on. I don't know. I mean, I know you guys have been doing a lot of homework, and this is probably creating more homework for you, but that's why we're all here.
So for the purpose, I'd like to get it back to where you all wanted to do kind of give us the overview of where you're at right now, and then we can continue on the discussion.
Check. One thing, do we need Larry anymore? Did he give you a good understanding?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
No.
And I'll just say one thing too. I think this fee started out being $5 when it first came in. And it was said used for school buses. And then through the years, it's worked its way up to 25. And I do know a lot of times we get questioned when people are talking about it. Why do we have to do this? And we get questioned, what's it used for? And we can't give him a specific answer. It's just part of the general fund that goes to the schools, the roads, the sheriffs, and everything that we enjoy, the courthouse, everything. But sometimes people has expressed, and I'm not just talking about this year, but through the years, some people, if they thought they may know where that $25 was going, they may not fuss quite as much. They probably still would. Some of them I think might like to see it. Oh, well, this year we're doing emergency services, or we are school bus, or whatever.
Well, I could tell you what they would like to see is, oh, y'all did away with that fee. That helps.
Yeah. And like I said, if you do away with it, then that's a $25 reduction on everybody that has a vehicle. But how you gonna make up the number, and if you make it up by a tax levy increase, to increase it up, you're looking at 23-cent increase. And if you wanted to, all of a sudden you decide you only need half of that, if it was maybe you only need to make up 200,000 that way, you could take the 23, cut it in half, and that would be your numbers too. If that came up later. Anybody, anything?
Larry, thank you.
Thanks, man.
Good deal. Thank you.
Turn the lights up on the way out.
Be a shot in the dark.
That's good. Perfect.
Thanks, Larry.
See you, man.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please.
I'm very concerned with the financial health of the county with the loss of this $410,000. I don't care where the $410,000 comes from. If it's gone, a service will suffer. Are we happy? I think that the overall question is, what service will we sacrifice to get rid of a fee or a tax? That is the bottom line. That's what happens when we're at this point. We have went through, I've been here 12 years. We've had very, very, very lean years at the beginning of my career here. The last few years, that challenge in balancing the budget has been lifted a little bit with the increase in the property taxes. That has allowed some flexibility. Looking forward, I think we can't just stop here. We have to look forward into what is the future of the county? Where do you want to see the future? And we've had those discussions before. You know, a few years ago, we had that first kind of roundtable discussion, and we wrote on the walls with paper. That was so exciting. It might be time that you have that same thought process again. How do you want the county to grow? If we're cutting a fee or cutting a service and completely removing that revenue, what are we going to stop serving? How will we stop serving the county? I do want that to be considered. Whether I'm here 30 more years or 30 more days, I love this county and I don't want to see anything go backwards.
Thanks. Mr. Boyer, back to you.
Okay,
Well, I'd like to comment if I could. On what she said, because I understand her concern about something needs to be cut. But when the United Way comes in here and asks us for $100,000 or more for childcare, I didn't see that same concern. When you're encouraging the EDA to purchase land, I don't see that same concern. So we're talking about saving our folks some money here. For some, it's not much. For some, it's a lot. And that's where our concern needs to be. We need to reel this stuff in. I didn't see any concern when we were paying $10,000 to do a bogus survey that has no merit that we still yet to hear the results of. Or when it just goes on and on. I made that argument earlier. I don't want to go back down that.
Okay.
But I just wanted to say that.
We're not going to go back down.
Yeah,
Back
thank you.
over to you.
okay, so are you wanting to discuss help me understand how you want to do this at this point? Do you want to discuss the items that we went through, or would you the large items you want to? Or we have a balanced budget that we can present to you, or do you want to go back to the big departments? Realize we have to, this has to be done tonight.
John Fant's interested in you present the balance budget that you brought here tonight to present. And then we'll see where it goes from there.
Okay. As you can see, our surplus deficit is at 0, so this is a balanced budget for expenditures and revenues.
While you're looking at this for point of clarity, the decision we made tonight is not, we're not approving a budget, we're just approving the number that you can then use for the advertising for the public hearing.
That is correct. But do keep in mind, once this number is advertised,
Can't change it by 1%.
we can only change it by 1%. If it changes by 1%, another public hearing must be held. And we will start July 1 without budget.
Chair, if I could ask you a quick question. The two things remaining that require discussion, if I'm hearing it correctly, is the vehicle license fee, the 2 emergency service personnel, And is there a third item?
Yes, 4. At least, if I'm missing something, let's make sure you turn it.
Could we hear those before we go through this?
Sure. I think number one is the revenue.
Yep, I think that's what we.
Number one is the revenue. That has to be decided. Because that's gonna drive everything else. If we decide on the revenue, everything else just goes off the table because we can't afford it year in.
The only revenue we're talking about is the vehicle license fee.
Yes, sir.
I'm in favor of keeping the revenue neutral because it's neutral as it was last year. I can see where we can make up the money. But it doesn't matter if you drive a $70,000 vehicle or a $500 vehicle, you're still draining the services the same amount. So I think it would be good to do away with the tax. We're gonna have to make up the revenue somewhere else. And this scenario, we'd be making it up from, it wouldn't be spread out as even as it. So previously, when we had this discussion, I thought that it would be just a couple of pennies on the levy. I was doing my math wrong. So I'm not in favor of doing away with the vehicle tax unless it can be made up equitably somewhere else. And I don't see where that can.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
And this might have been better asked for Larry, and he may have covered this, but last year we were gonna have some unanticipated revenue because of the car assessments. And I know he said they'd come down some, maybe 20% compared, 10, they only come down
Off of
10%.
last year.
Okay, so what's the difference in the unanticipated revenue that
There-
this year? Last year it was around 700,000-800,000, was it not, close to $1 million?
It's close to $1 million. That was refunded, remember?
We didn't refund $1 million.
Yes, sir.
$1 million? I thought it was around 700,000-800,000 because we didn't give them the full refund. But so what is it compared to that? If it was $1 million last year, what is it this year?
You mean over 22?
Mhm.
Okay. I can show you.
And I guess the better question, if we're looking at 410,000, what's that difference in that increase to the 410,000?
Clarify that for me.
All right, so if the $25 fee
It's 14.
comes to 14.
Yep.
And we're gonna get unanticipated revenue because the values didn't drop that significantly. So people are paying out the wazoo once again on their car. What's that difference between 410 and the amount that we're actually anticipating? So that's right at close to that $25 fee.
We actually won't know that till January of next year.
Correct.
January is when we get it is interesting. I was talking to Mr. Boyd about this. Yeah, the assessments come in January, so we're estimating on.
It is an estimate.
Yeah.
So it's an estimate that if the estimations on that would be close to making up that difference on that $25 fee.
But what's absent from that is a lot of the unfunded mandates we got from the state, from pay raises and other things like that are driving up our costs. And so, which we don't have any control. And we have a decision there of paying for what the state says we're gonna do and then not paying our people that aren't state funded.
And then we have I don't think we've nailed down the number. We have to get to $15 an hour for part-time employees as well. By 23,
26.
26.
January 1.
I think that we can talk about that's want to be $400,000 or $500,000. Yeah.
We talked about doing it in increments.
Yeah, talking about, we're having that discussion where they incrementally do that as well.
So did we get, excuse me, John, did we get 200,000 grant from the federal government for federal land, tribal lands? We
No, it's
talked
only
about that.
98.
It's 98,000? And
No, are you talking about,
wait. You're talking about in lieu of taxes.
that's payment in lieu of taxes.
Right. There was another grant that we were getting.
That we have gotten half of it, the other half is still outstanding.
That was 100,000.
111,000.
And do another 200,000. Is that figured into this? I mean, I don't know. I don't see the revenue. I mean, we always see the spend, what we're spending, but I don't ever see the breakdown of the revenue.
It's right here.
Okay. Help me out. So where is that 110,000? Because that wasn't something we had last year either, correct?
No, it was not. And it will be in fund balance and it will be in this carryover. Bear with me, as this computer is slow, I apologize.
So would this not be,
It's in fund balance.
would
Here,
this, we've got 110, we're due 200, another 100, is that?
we are due another 100.
So that's 210, would that not, in essence, that almost cut that fee in half, the car fee, the 410,000 that we're trying to figure out where it's coming from.
To make sure I understand you correctly, you're saying take that fund, take the difference from fund balance?
Well, why did it go to fund balance? Who made that decision?
I didn't know where to put it, so it went to fund balance.
Okay, so we
The
put
fund
it.
balance last year, we ended at 18, right? What did we end the fund balance at last year?
I think he said we're at 23 currently.
But you got the ARPA money in there, which is.
Yes, we did.
And so once we utilize that ARPA money,
It
that'll
will
take us to
come
what
down.
a regular fund balance should look like, which is 18, is that right?
2 months, yes.
2
which
months, we
is-
have to have 2 months.
Right.
2 months have to be sitting there in case.
So back to my point is there's a potential way to work on the 410 that we need to recoup.
If your argument is that we can pull it out of fund balance, that's a short-term solution for a long-term problem. Because reducing our fund balance puts us at risk financially for, as they call it, the rainy day fund. So I just don't see.
We were at our fund balance though, right?
We spent some of that fund balance last year to pay for some of the capital improvements that we made last year. So we brought down the fund balance last year as in order to make the budget balance last year. And so keeping that fund balance within 18 to 20% is what the accountants recommends.
So
Always been a goal.
So when we paid some CIP last year out of the fund balance,
Out of ARPA, yes.
which is kind of a savings, you're saying out of ARPA, was that was part of that 40,000 that we had to pay on the Baywood project? That was in CIP, correct?
It's in fund balance, yes.
Yeah, so there's 40,000 of that. And it brings me back to my point. We're doing a lot of frivolous things here. And then when it comes to trying to just give a little break to the taxpayers, we've all got issues with
I think
services.
it's, we're gonna have to move on, but I guess I do want to say, I take exception to the idea that it's frivolous. I'm not saying any budget that we have there's always stuff that you can find that you either don't, not you personally, but anybody could disagree with. But a lot of it I view as investments. People will easily look at the community support funding line. I think last year we did about 125,000 or something like that. But when you invest in these nonprofits like the food banks and United Way, we get a lot back for the dollars that we put into it for the benefit of the overall community. So I kind of look at it more as an investment. We're making the best investment. I think we're making it the best given the judgment we can make. But it's always worthy of review. But at this point, I think Bradley, you were talking about revenue, and we need to kind of address that issue. If we're ready to say, you want to put that into a motion for a particular revenue, or is there something else that we need to talk about? We've heard what Supervisor Anderson's had to say and his concerns there. But is there something else that we need to talk about on revenue to inform the decision on whether or not we try to do something on the vehicle tax fee, or we just keep things flat for this year?
Yeah, I think that's, at least jump in on this. Is my first time doing this in a couple of months on it. But I would think the decision on revenue would be first, and then if the decision's made that, hey, we're going to reduce that amount of revenue, then we can go right. Then we would have to cut existing programs or future programs that we want to fund. Is that where I'm at?
You are correct. if the revenue is not neutral, the first thing would be investing in future, then any additional expansion of programs.
So I think the fund balance, we want to maintain the fund balance
I
where it is. It's not an area where we want to play with. That would get us in trouble with our auditor
Mhm.
and some other areas. So we have to maintain that. So that would go, okay, well then, what are your options at that point? So we have to look at some other options.
I respect that, but if we had thought, and this is pre you being here, but we'd have done a little bit better, we wouldn't have had to have took that grant that we got unexpectedly, because I'd hate to imagine where we would be right now if we hadn't got this federal grant at the last minute that came in. But we were talking, I know we're going to the revenue piece. There was 3 things that you all were talking about. One was the fee. You said 4. Then 2, and EMS, is that 2? Are you counting that as 2 separate things or 1?
I was counting that as, I guess I was trying to frame it as, here was the things we had the biggest discussion on. In the EMS positions, I think there was a lot of discussion on whether to go with 2, go with 1. Do we have 1 and then look at some of the data on the 1 position, or do we go with none? And do we try to somehow incentivize more of our volunteers? So that was a discussion point. We had,
Is that the 4th thing?
the second, I'm sorry.
Oh, wait. EMS and incentivization was in the
So
same.
yeah, there's no incentivization in the budget. There's none in there at this point.
I'm
because that's-
sorry, there is 40,000.
Oh, there is, okay, I'm sorry, I apologize. So we did that, my fault, to put that in there. And third was, I'm sorry, I have a break.
Parking lot.
No, we have the parking lot issue, obviously, when we talk about the PSA position. I think we owed you
Yes.
some information on the PSA position.
That was the number 4.
And the registrar. And the registrar's office. So the registrar, the PSA, EMS, and the revenue issue.
Not the parking lot.
And what the parking lot's on here.
Okay. All right, just so I was clear a little bit. Sorry.
Okay.
Trying to wrap 2 meetings into one, guys. I appreciate the patience.
Is there any other big items that we need to make them aware of on this?
I don't think so. I don't want to jump around too much. I don't want to jump
Okay.
back and forth between general fund and PSA. Those are the 2.
Is, we have to solve the revenue before we can continue this discussion. I'm sorry, that was a question. So the only thing at question is whether or not to preserve the vehicle license tax or not.
That sounds to what you're talking about.
I'll make a motion that we preserve the vehicle tax at this time.
Okay, we have a motion to preserve the vehicle tax, basically meaning keep revenue neutral. Which means preserve the revenue tax from this upcoming FY. You're saying?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion with a second, discussion. Hearing no discussion, take a vote. All in favor, say aye. All opposed?
No.
I'm an aye. Yes, the revenue's flat. Meaning no levy increase.
Understood.
Just for the record, I want to make sure no change to the real estate levy, no change
No
to personal
levy.
property, machine and tools, merchants
You
capital.
want
Everything
the
is the
motion
same.
in that form? Is that how you
No.
prefer, or you're okay
I
with
just
what
wanna
we
make
got? There's no levy increase.
My intent that we keep everything the way it is.
So we don't need a motion for no tax.
No, the motion was to make the revenue neutral.
The
Okay,
budget will be advertised with all the rates the same as they are now. They'll be advertised that way.
That's the reason for my question. The rates, the levy rates are each listed individually. That's why I'm wondering.
That's your question. Will this year's budget and last year's budget be advertised at the same time or just this year's budget?
just FY '24.
Okay. Mr. Boyer, back over. EMS,
Just, one of the facts. EMS. We talked about two positions, was back and forth on the two positions, additional positions in EMS. We had total cost, Lisa, is,
For the two positions,
yes,
two additional.
two additional positions beyond what we have.
about 140.
About 140, about 140. So, discussion.
In this budget,
It is.
this budget. Thought we voted at the last meeting not to hire two additional, wait until we had data back.
I think that was the general thought. Go ahead. You can jump in.
I don't know if it was a
It
vote.
was a vote. I think that was the, I think that was the
That was the
consensus
consensus. Okay.
was, I thought the consensus was no positions. Was your thought there was more?
We got one.
No, besides the one we had.
My thought that the consensus was adding 0 additional EMS to the county payroll. But it's in the budget, it is, the two are in the budget for us.
We put it in there so we can do a discussion. Make sure we're all- Or, I guess so we could have other things. But this is anything involved.
I still hold my position that we haven't flushed out this position at all. Vehicle came in today, we were gonna determine what the metrics were that we were gonna measure this off of. And essentially table this until, but if they're in the budget and we get the data back prior to the next budget session, I mean, we may find in August that this is an absolutely necessary position that has to be filled 6 days, or however, whatever the logistics are on those 3 positions. I just don't, I'm still in favor of incentivizing the volunteer system that we have and holding off the paid system as long as we can.
Well, we're gonna budget for 2 more. What did we budget if we just say 1 more? And then have the, being on rescue squad, I mean, to have somebody there means a whole lot. I guess what I'm saying is, we're looking at the one that we have to see if it's working or not, right? Are we talking about the end of the year, I mean, 6, 7 months?
Yeah. Did he come on, when did he come on board?
He came on board in January.
January.
Yeah, that was just because of the hiring
Yeah,
process.
we talked about the need to have that to kind of support this and see what type of shifts, what type of number of calls, how to differentiate between those calls.
Is that the data you're talking about?
This was discussion last time was, how do we know what we're doing for work? Why? Is there a reason to improve, increase those numbers until we understand what the value of that is? I think that's mine.
So what data would support adding it? What's the data we're looking for? Are we, some people out dead in the road or?
No, it had to do with response times. Each of the departments are evaluated on, how long it takes them, when they get the beep, and then how long it takes them to respond. And so this emergency response thing, once the vehicle got here, using that value. So for example, as I told the group last time, I was involved with a couple of 911s within 10 days. And one of them, the county person showed up. They were about third there, but that they did show up. And so having that response to an incident, is that value added? Or what I saw at that particular one was there was a lot of duplicity and effort. I mean, that everybody, their others showed up. And so the thought was, calls come in and that vehicle and that individual responds, that's evaluated and compared to, did it help or did it not help? In getting service quicker to the whatever the particular occasion was.
And that protocol, I might add, is changing now. We got a response vehicle now, and I think some of that protocol's already changed. We got one agency that's not answering 54% of their calls, I think it was this last month. And
So-
they're already taking that into note and are going there.
Well,
So,
because I sit on the commission as our representative on the EMS commission. And I know, for example, Freeze has issues because a lot of their volunteers work during the day. So if there's calls during the day, they go unanswered. We have similar situation in Elk Creek. A lot of calls go unanswered. We've got one guy here. Last year we were talking about, I think initially we were talking about 3 for this program. And it's like, well, let's do 1 and see how it goes. And now it's, well, let's wait on the data. We kind of know the issue. We don't really need data. Let's, at the very least, like Kenneth said, let's add at least 1. And because we're setting them up to fail with just having the 1 now. That would give us 2 that could respond and some flexibility in the schedule because the one guy just can't, we have a huge geographic area. One guy can't cover this county adequately.
well, the idea was to measure it during the 8 hours that this individual was on duty, and so, but Elk Creek is a paid position. That's been the argument kind of all along, is that we've got paid agencies right now that are having trouble responding. So how does it improve things if we add more paid people?
Well,
But I think, let me finish. But the idea that if it's in the budget as a placeholder, I'm still in the camp that we haven't incentivized the incentives, And so the idea that we need to continue to flesh that out as well and see if we can begin to address this. All of us understand the demographics and the challenges that we face as a county. We're trying to preserve a volunteer service. What I think this actually does for us is it gives you, the county administrator, a lot of flexibility. We've got one right now. We've got a vehicle that can go into service. We can see how it works in January. Something comes around and it sounds like, we need to pull the trigger. You pull the trigger because we've got the money in the budget. I'm comfortable with that, but I would rather, instead of saying it's in the budget, let's go ahead and hire, I'd really rather support getting those incentives that we've budgeted for and try to get those in place and see if we can have some effect of that. And then we grow into this other option that we've developed for the rapid response.
I think we can do both, Mr. Man. I think we can do both. We can provide the incentives that they've got figured in there. But if we were to add 2, which is the request, that gives us 3. Strategically, that makes sense because then they can schedule accordingly and give us the greatest amount of coverage over the greatest part of the county.
I got the concept. I
Well,
understand.
let me finish this thing too, because last year we had this discussion and we agreed to add 1, and it took us to January to get that 1. I don't know how long it would take to get these 2. We may be in the next budget season, the way those types of things work with background checks and finding applicants and interview processes and the whole deal. So in light of that, if we've got 2 in the budget, we didn't cut the car fee out. People, may or may not like that, but let's move forward with the 2 that's it's in there.
I'm not arguing to take it out. I'm arguing to keep it at. It's just, I guess what I'm saying is leave the money in the budget and the county administrator and the emergency services coordinator figure out when the time to pull the trigger.
Okay, and if they say next week's the time to pull the trigger, then pull the trigger, because we don't need to encourage kicking this can down the road. Lives are on the line here. This should be our priority. Public safety should be our priority. We say it is. Let's give these guys authority to move.
It is a priority. Any other discussion on that? Leave it in the budget for now. Not for now. Leave it in the budget. That's your ask, right? Is leave it in the budget.
No, we put it as a placeholder to have a discussion, period. That was.
But it's technically in the budget.
We put it in because that was, I think it was because there was so much discussion around it.
Yeah, I get it. But it's in there right now.
Well, and I appreciate that, because I wasn't here to discuss it, and I watched some of that discussion, and I appreciate it.
Okay.
So sounds to me, we've got a couple options here. One option is take it out. It's $140,000 we take out,
117, I did the math,
$170,000.
117.
Take it out.
Let's keep talking. It's
And you-
cheap.
And evaluate. We can take some time to evaluate for next year. Second option is we can put one in there, and we can evaluate and give us the flexibility to decide with EMS when it's the right time to pull the trigger. Second option would be leave both in there, and then give us the option to evaluate and then pull trigger on 2 positions. Obviously, it wouldn't cost, if we don't, the further we push it, the less it costs for that next. But there's a tail to that. There's a cost. Anytime we have employees, we don't know.
Yeah, it's a permanent increase to the budget. Yeah, Mr. Ivey.
Can I, what's the staff's recommendation?
Vince, you want to give any recommendation on this?
Wait a minute, we've been down this road. You need to put a mask on if you're gonna do that.
It's a-
I think, in fairness to Steve, on being here as long as he has. And knowing the process and where we're trying to go with it. And I remember all the way back to the conversations that we had at the whiteboard over in the Independence Rescue Squad building. And I agree, we all support volunteerism as long as we can. And hopefully, one of the incentives he's getting ready to talk about shortly is going to, encourage that more. But I do think also when I hear people talking, just turning it in, from one of our long-term volunteers, the other day, that volunteerism as we know it in the past is suffering, it's going away. For whatever reason, the younger generation, they want to be paid to do it. And so, but I think we ought to sustain volunteerism in Grayson County as long as we can. And I think this support of paid services will help do that. I think it, with the association now and the commission, I should say, and the position that they're taking and they're asking and all, now that they're in support of it, I think that's a huge step to get them on board with this effort. And I see this as helping support and sustain volunteerism in Grayson County longer. I think when I'm, 10, 15 years from now, I'm sitting home drinking tea on the porch, I think we're going to be a whole lot more toward paid system in Grayson County. But who knows?
So what's your recommendation?
The recommendation would be that I was hoping we'd get at least 1 to 2 positions. I think 2 would be great, but I was hoping that we would, get at least 1 more to work with what we've got. And to somebody's point, one of the board members' point, if we don't bring 2 on right now, well then, if we get down the road, which I don't think we really will, get down the road and say, oh man, now we've hired 3 people, we need to do something different. We just took a livelihood of 3 families and put it, maybe jeopardize it. I think that was a good point, whichever one of the board members made that. But I do think we're on the road to, if we add 1 more, I think it's sustainable, and I think it just supports what we've already got going. We could send 1 east, we could send 1 west, we could work double, we could cover 24 hours or 12 hours at a time. There are just different ways that we could cover 16 hours, 2 16 hours. There are different ways that we could do it. But I think this would just help.
So your recommendation is at least 1.
Yeah, for it to be at least 1.
That's what I was going to mention. If we could do something that the federal government can't do is compromise. If we're talking about 7 months evaluation of the one we got, and bring on 1 more, because the territory, 1 this way and 1 that way, and still go on with 7 more months of seeing if it's working or where it ain't. 'Cause I hate to put in 3 and say,
and come down in January and say, hey, well, we need them, let's get rid of them. You be getting rid of somebody, that would really compromise somebody's plan. My recommendation would be at least do one and study for 7 months. Since we got the money in there, but that's just me, I'm just.
Do keep
Go
in
ahead,
mind,
Steve.
I apologize for interrupting, do keep in mind, we have one vehicle to share between two. So it's
it would
not
be
sending
24
one
hour
to-
coverage, but one vehicle.
Yes.
Be 16 hours.
But my understanding,
The idea is 24 coverage, one vehicle.
let me,
If you have.
yeah, we're not talking about buying 2 additional vehicles.
No, it's just
So, correct me, Mitch, if I'm wrong, because I know you oversee this, but when we send someone down to, for example, to help out with freeze, they use the freeze vehicle. Is that something they negotiate?
They actually used our first response vehicle to go down to the freeze. And they can, what it does is when freeze maybe can have only one person respond. Now, our person allows them to have 2 people, which have to have for response. And Lisa's shaking her, but I'm over my head now because she understands it a lot better, but now you've got 2 people respond. We just did it the other day. I was down there talking to him when he said, gotta go, freeze needs help.
There's 2 things I want to point out. For one is the incentive, and I think that's a great idea, and I don't disagree with incentivizing volunteers. But I want to point out one thing, when the fire chiefs came in here and they asked us, we're talking about giving these money for the vehicle, and every other year was going to rotate it, and I think we all unanimously agreed with their idea to help pay that lease, and they were going to figure that I can tell you incentivized a lot of those guys that we were willing to do that, to hear them and to do that. And I'm not saying that's in place of the incentive that you're doing, but it's those type of things that keep, because our fire department's predominantly pretty strong. And so that's incentives when we do that. But if we're looking at, I know, it sounds like one may be on the table here, but from my perspective, what I've seen and been, to these meetings and things, if we had 3 right now, I don't think we would need, next year, we'd be asking for 4 and 5. I don't see that in the next couple of years, we would be revisiting this issue. If we go ahead and put the team in place while we've got the means to do so, vet it out. I understand with any job you take, there's a risk of getting fired or getting laid off. I get that, but the other risks that we're talking about are lives, and I think that's greater. And I think we do need to be cognizant of people's employment and those types of things. And we do a pretty good job with that. But I still would advocate for 2.
We're 1, 2, 0.
I don't have any comment. I'll compromise, but I still think it's premature.
I'll just put out, I like to make a motion, since we got the money in there, at least we do 1, look it over for 7 months. 7 months from my side, we need the 3. On my side, we don't need the 1, but at least that would give 16 month coverage.
Do we have a motion to fund 2 positions at the, my words, make sure I'm not wordsmithing, but authorize the county administrator to hire 1 person now with potential for a second in the next 6 to 8 months or something like that.
That's correct. Compromise. That's one.
So that's
I'll say.
what I've got to say. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just want to be clear on the motion. So we're still funding 2, but we're only authorizing the administrator to hire 1 when he sees fit. But what if he sees fit for the second? Has he got to come back to us and say, look, guys, we got the money in here, we need this spot? Or what? How does that work?
I think the intent from what his motion was is that the county administrator has the authority when he and the emergency services coordinator decide to hire that 3rd individual.
But right
I
now, we're
heard
going ahead
after
and
7 months.
After 7 months. But it's at there, he doesn't have to come back because we're authorizing the expenditure of the funds. We were authorizing it in the budget.
So we're putting it at the discretion of administration. Is that for the 3rd one?
After a period of time.
That's for 7 months, right?
That's what the motion was, right?
Yes, to go to January,
Go to
look at
January,
it,
go
and
to,
see.
talking about, beginning of January, you would authorize.
The third
If need
person.
be.
If need be.
So just to restate the motion is to, I guess, appropriate at this point, appropriate funding for 2 additional emergency services, response, personnel at the county with the authorization with this appropriation to hire one immediately come July when this budget takes effect. And that the county administrator has the authority to hire the second one in January, data-based. Are you comfortable with that?
I don't like the term database. I didn't hear that in there.
Well, that's what this discussion's been about, seeing whether.
I think that's what the 7 months is for, but for me, I would like to see the missed calls go down by a significant number.
So
This department is actually making calls. I think that's the,
Okay, so that's the motion, right? I mean, you got it, one person hired, appropriate for 2, as you currently have in the budget. With, when we approve the budget, the authorization is to hire one immediately. And then in 6 months, come January, review that data and then make a determination. Is that,
Yeah, and it would be you and Paul, correct?
yeah, is that okay with what you're saying? The motion that you're
Yes,
making?
that's what I was trying to compromise with the staff.
Okay, so you already seconded it. Discussion, anything else? Okay, take a vote, all in favor? Aye. Okay. All right, we're gonna take a 5-minute break. Recess for 5 minutes, we'll be back at 16:56. That'd be 4:56 PM. You know what time it
Oh, I
is?
thought you said, yeah, it's almost 17.
Thank you. See, the movement begins. You know, you get one more person, they're talking the 24-hour clock, and next thing you know, everybody's on board.
It's so much easier.
Oh, that should be.
Supervisor Payne,
The on-board comment.
first place I went to work, Haynes, we went by military time. I punched in at 1900 hours.
Makes way too much sense. That's why no one else does it.
So you want a blank for something?
Mhm.
You want a blank?
No, it's not important still.
No.
Okay, I'm sweating.
Oh, okay.
Stress.
Fuss.
Ward. Back over to you, Mr. Ward.
Okay, let's talk about, can we tackle incentives? Yeah. Okay, talk about them. So I emailed the board on the, one incentive, which was, the trash fee. The total reduction in fees for trash would be about $43,000, so that's $216 per volunteer. The second fee, obviously, we could reduce is the vehicle fee, which would be $25 per volunteer. That would be a total of, if they got one car, it's $5,000. If there's two volunteers, or if they have two cars, it'd be $10,000 into the budget. Those are two incentives. I understand that we want to take a broader perspective of this, and a broader look at this. What I thought I heard from the board was, hey, I want something now. What can we do now for our volunteers? And so the trash fee was actually this young lady's idea right here. And I thought, hey, that's not a bad idea. Let's pitch it, see what they think. I talked to a couple of volunteers, Gary Hash,
Renee.
Renee, and two other people. They thought it was a neat idea. And of course, the vehicle sticker fee, I think, would be beneficial. We will come up with a more comprehensive plan for next year. I think that's kind of what I heard from you, as how to tackle this. It is a delicate balance that I think we're all talking about. Volunteers and paid, and how to slowly get into this, and make sure we value the people that volunteer in this county, they are so important to all those dollars. And certainly that was several of them, and expressed my thanks for what they do. And I think there needs to be some type of communication campaign towards that, so they understand how much we appreciate what they do. So with that, those are the two incentives. I think it'll be open for your discussion if you want to move forward with those incentives or not. If you do, we can we'll build those right to the budget.
Go ahead.
Is it in the budget now? Those two?
The one, I was unsure about the county vehicle,
We have made a
the
decision.
vehicle fee, but we can reinstate that. It had to be reworked anyway, that ordinance, and that would need to be probably adopted. There'll be further action on that in the coming months to get that implemented. But yes, 40,000 is in the budget, so we'll just need to add a little more. I can take care of that.
The reduction in the trash fee we put in there. What I thought I heard was, okay, that's a good start.
So with the car fee, do they get, if they're a volunteer, do they get that for all their cars, or do they just get two? Like we used to give them stickers, so now we're giving them credit for two.
Maybe you got to flesh this out between now and, when you're looking at implementing it, but, the verification process, Jack,
We've been through that before. So there's a previous mechanism of verification in place. They do have to submit a roster. That roster has to be active, updated each year. If that person is listed as an active member on the roster, then they would qualify for the incentives.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Hall has a list of these volunteers. Is that
Yes,
for
there
most
is.
of the agencies?
There is a database that is active that we have much easier access to.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess it's the active piece, because, there's a lot of people that are on the volunteer fire department list that are aged out, but they're still considered members, but they're not active.
Right,
And
and there's we actually talked about that just a little bit. We'll leave that up to the agencies.
Yeah. Hit the I believe button on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they need to flush that out if someone's contributing in a large way, however they think, then we'll go, okay, we're going to trust you because they're volunteering for us. So
Right.
I don't know what we want.
There are things that we're limited to, such as LODA. That active member must be a responding member to calls.
Right.
But an active member that is a support staff, so to speak, they can have two different meanings, and we're not limited to that.
That's a question that probably will come up. There's a lot of husband and wife volunteers. What are you gonna do there?
Good point.
Trash fee should be the same.
Trash is free, and
But
they
you're
get two
giving
vehicles.
away one trash fee instead of two. when you got your husband and wife, and he gets some trash fees and she don't. I mean, it's.
The trash fee is based on location, not on person.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, you've got a husband and wife team though, and they're getting one,
Oh, so
$700.
Yeah,
yeah, I
they're
guess.
getting half of the benefit.
Yeah.
But they're gonna get 4 stickers, right? If they're both volunteers, they would get 4 stickers. I'd say it would be per household volunteer because there's gonna be. I don't know.
Well,
That's
I
something.
mean, it doesn't matter to me, that question will come up.
Yeah.
They would have a lot of husband and wife.
It may be to your point, not everything's fair.
Yeah. I think they'll be excited, especially if they live in the same house. That's a little bit of a break.
Is it, this is your recommendation is to do both of these? And the budget's okay with those based on the number? Okay. I do agree that we need to communicate, we need to roll this out, but there needs to be some fair made by it. I don't know when volunteer rescue people, fire people want this, but
It's, actually, in May.
yeah, so now would be the time.
Make a motion to adopt staff's recommendation on the 2 incentive programs, trash fee and
Volunteer.
for volunteers.
You have a motion, as you're saying, a second, Mr. Anderson, all in favor, say aye. And I'm also aye. Okay?
The rest of this shouldn't be as painful.
Hear you. Okay. So, the other 2 requests. Yeah, the first one was, registrar asked for a full-time position. There's a lot of discussion on whether that was needed or not. I think, so obviously, what do you think? 7 weeks of wisdom. It's kind of goofy, I wasn't sure what. So, so certainly met with Stacy on this. She has been through 4 part-time employees. 4 part-time. Based on the duties that are assigned to that individual, the requirement to back her up, she is not been able to gather someone who's willing to stay on and conduct those duties. Talked to Carroll, called Carroll County, they have 2 full-time people.
The registrar and one additional deputy.
Registrar. Just to kind of get an understanding of why. The first comment was, I just can't see how you can do it with more, the amount of training that you have, how much time you're gone, dealing with public issues. They didn't feel like it was reasonable to have. There's a requirement that Stacy goes away, she's good, that we would have to immediately have somebody else in there, and that the training period is quite long on that. The amount of online training that they have to do is a little more than I expected. So those were the data points that I received, and Lisa, if I'm missing any data points on that, I can jump in.
Other than the code section that it is a requirement to have someone to immediately, state law, that someone must immediately take over if the registrar is incapacitated for some reason.
So the cost to the county to add an additional person is?
Is the registrar a state funded position?
It is a state funded position, however, this,
This is a county,
the
this would be a
deputy
county.
would be a
funded.
county funded position, good question.
Did you contact any other counties like Smith or just Carroll?
I did not.
General government.
Try to pull it up real quick and see if they had to.
Nothing happens real quick on this computer.
That budgeted number's 100,000 for, but that's not all just for.
No, it isn't.
That's for salaries for poll workers and all that stuff.
Yes, it is, and that's commingled.
More weeks or more.
budget number was around 45.
I think it is 45, so it would be
For the position.
roughly, 55,000 for the entire position. Yes, with benefits included, yes.
Okay. I'll make a motion. Is that in there?
Yes, it is in the budget.
So we can.
But again, I'm trying to apologize.
That's okay.
Yeah, trying to stress, we put these in there as talking points because they were all
Right.
part of our overall discussion last meeting. And I didn't want to we didn't want to not include those and go, okay, we missed that. And what does that look like in our budget? It's a little bit challenging to wrangle this. So
Mr. Chair, I'm willing to make a motion that we, based on that information, we approve that position.
Okay, we have a motion to approve a new full-time position in the registrar's office. Is there a second?
Sounds like. I'm on the Joel's. State mandate, all that.
So the state doesn't mandate that you have a full-time position, it mandates that you have a position. That's why we were working as a part-time position before. Again, she went to 4, able to get somebody to stay for very, only short lengths of time, but she able to get someone to stay for part-time, no benefits.
Wait 1 second.
I have to add to that before we can go into discussion, really.
I really don't know, what do you do other than election days?
Well, it's a point of process for us to discuss it, whether we need a second or we're gonna kill the motion. That's right.
I'll say.
All right, so we have a second, so, we'll go into discussion.
Can I don't know if I can answer your question.
Let Ken finish his thought now that we're officially in discussion.
Well, not knowing what the registrar does other than election month. I do know they're asking for a bigger building too, and that'll be town expense.
A bigger building.
It'll be more space.
Well, let's go.
I think
That's not part of this motion.
Every department in the county.
Yeah, everybody's gonna, we're all-
That's right.
I'll just clarify, that's not part of this motion.
Yeah, I just say it, but
Mr. Chair, if I can, is there a reason why our part-time people are leaving all the time? Is it pay? Is it atmosphere? Is it work environment?
At least I don't know the answer to that.
Can you answer that?
Can, I'm not saying I can answer it emphatically, but you said she went through several part-time, 4 part-time. My understanding is because of the level of responsibilities and everything, nobody wants to take that on just for part-time and not have benefits. And that was my understanding. The reason that I feel like, and I'm very skeptical, of most everything, but the reason that I think this is important that we give her some more full-time support, considering the geographics of all of our precincts and the big debates that she brought to us last year about wanting to close precincts and that kind of thing. And it's not just a election year thing. There's something going on down there quite often as far as when you've got candidates and different people filing to run for different positions. I mean, there's a whole lot. I think the other day they were out going to each precinct, her along with her board, checking to see if they were ADA compliant and trying to get things in order. I mean, there's way more to it, but the main component that I heard was in the event something happened to her, sickness, for God forbid, car accident or something like that, these part-time people didn't want to have to step into that as to her backup with basically part-time salary and no benefits. So it would put somebody in there that could step in and take right over in the event that something happened, she couldn't make it. I think that was the intent.
Go ahead, Mr. Chair. So the skepticism I have came from you, so.
I know, I picked up on that.
she's appointed, correct?
She is appointed by her.
Appointed by the electoral board. And that could potentially change at drop of a hat, I'm assuming. It can.
Every 4 years.
And so it seems to me that to avoid the only thing we're talking about is in the event of her absence, it is required by law that somebody is qualified to be a deputy registrar. And is that, if I'm taking this down a rabbit hole, I'm sorry, but it seems like since that is an appointed position, and this would be a county hired position, that it reaches the level that somebody on staff at Grayson County should be qualified to do that job in the event that something takes place. And for whatever reason, the part-times are leaving. If it's benefits, that's fine. I'm certainly not gonna go down that.
That was what I was told. I don't know.
I
for
hear
sure.
you, I hear you. But being that we're required by Commonwealth statute to have somebody that's guaranteed to put in that place, it seems to me you need to take the appointment politics out of it and have somebody on staff who's qualified to step in there in the event of an emergency. It would be really easy to hire a full-time position. I don't want to muddy the waters over something that's a percentage of the budget. Let's just, if we have a revolving door with part-time, I don't know that we're solving the problem with a revolving door with full-time.
So the request is for an appropriation for a full-time position. But it sounds like there might be a little more exploration that needs to occur to make sure that we're doing the right thing, whether it's a county full-time position that resides in the registrar's office, or there's somebody that's been deputized, which is, I think, your point, on county, that exists on county staff right now that could fall in on that position if she becomes incapable. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm trying to be delicate here.
No, I think you're making valid points.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a situation where there's a revolving door of people being employed in the registrar's office. And I just don't think going from part-time to full-time is gonna solve our issue. And if it is that critical that we have that leg in our mission, that we have to be able to have somebody who steps in there, is there somebody on staff here that we could give a raise to go through that process of always being ready to be a deputy in the case of an absence?
So, question to go back to you, since again, it's an appropriation we're at right now. We haven't authorized anything until we pass the budget. So the appropriation is for a full-time job. During the time between now and when we come back to approve the budget, authorize the budget, can you kind of maybe talk to the electoral board folks and maybe flesh this out and how this is going to work? I mean, if they appoint her, are we in fact, if we authorize a full-time position, are we really authorizing the electoral board to hire that person? Is that what we're doing?
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a politics situation.
I'm with you. So the question to the electoral board is, I think what you're going after is there's some other dynamics at play that are causing the part-time people to leave.
And if I may, of the part-time people that have hired, how many of them were qualified deputies? If they went through 4 and the training is that extensive, my guess is there's not any of them that were qualified to be deputy.
To answer your question, I don't know that they were here long enough to complete the training.
Right, and I guess where my concern is on filling this position to work for a political appointee does not give this county any continuity if the time arises where we don't have a deputy. And if it's that mission critical, I feel like we need to have somebody more vested on the staff to be able to step in there at a moment's notice to support the electoral board.
So are you okay with the idea, it's not a motion because I can't make a motion, but the idea of, for now, appropriating the 55K basically for this position, but county administrator's got some work to do to come back.
I think so, and I'm not trying to throw a wrench in it, I see a collision coming with the way it's currently set.
Is that okay with you? Do you understand? Okay.
Sorry. You don't have to be sorry.
Go ahead.
Nothing to be sorry about.
So we have a motion to approve a full-time position for the registrars. We have a second. I'll call for a vote on that motion.
And that is to be funded through the registrar's office.
The current motion is to fund a full-time position and the electoral board would be to approve. So proper thing to do would probably either rescind the current motion if we want to modify it and change it based on what we just said, or we'll just vote on it and see where that falls out. And if it doesn't pass, then we can bring it up a different motion.
If we're still in discussion, if I can, I'm not opposed to having someone ready to fill the shoes of the registrar in case of an absence.
So is the intent behind the motion, go ahead, it was your motion,
Can I
so
withdraw the motion?
you can, you made it, you can withdraw.
Can I just withdraw the motion and then we go back to budget discussion and task staff with?
Yeah.
So I want to withdraw the motion.
Okay, motion withdrawn.
And Brantley makes some good points. I'm not sure. Political stuff, I'm not real clear on that. I kind of see where you're going with that, but just, if we could, just let staff vent that out a little bit more, or maybe have the voter registrar herself come and make the case. I don't know if there'll be opportunity for that or not, maybe through a letter, because if the money's still there. But anyway, so the motion's withdrawn and I'll put it back to you, Mr. Chair.
So right now, though, the money's in the budget. And we're okay with leaving the money in the budget as it is right now. But do you want to put any?
Necessarily a motion necessary, unless you tell me to take it out.
Right, but so we're gonna appropriate it, I get it, so there's no motion required because it's part of the overall budget, but there's some restrictions that of our interest in the authorization piece.
That would require.
And so that's where there may want to be a second motion that this specific thing is not authorized for hire until county administrator does some further examination. Does that?
Let me see if I can frame a motion. I made the motion that the funds are appropriated. However, hang on. I've said that. I'll just say what I want to say out loud. You've got a Democratic appointee that will likely be a Republican appointee, that the deputy was hired by a Democrat appointee, and that's going to happen here before too. And if it does happen, that's what I see happening. And I'm just saying, if it is that mission critical that we have somebody ready to step in the shoes of the registrar, it is incumbent on the county that somebody on this staff is ready to do that in lieu of hiring a full-time position as a deputy.
So
You said it, but it's not in the form.
we're not in a motion or what, but we're just in discussion. And from my standpoint, understanding the political appointee aspects of all this, I don't see what you're anticipating is a new registrar being appointed because it's a political position. I don't see that. I don't know of that. I'm not aware of that.
I'm not making the assumption that that's gonna happen, but let's say it did. And we've lost 4 part-time employees that haven't even gone through the training. I don't think hiring somebody full-time that goes all the way through the training is gonna improve the revolving loop. And if it's that important that we have somebody in place, then I think it's incumbent upon the county to have somebody either existing or
not existing that is ready to take on that role.
So is your motion then that the county explores, explores options for providing that, deputy, assistance capability?
I'm not sure I have a motion, I just have opposition to funding it as it is.
So maybe we don't need a motion right now, but we do need some clarity before we approve the overall budget.
Right, I just took that it was your concern that because she was appointed by a Democrat.
I shouldn't have said that, but
Well, that was what you were thinking, that's fine.
well, it's, anytime we get in a position of a political appointee hiring their own deputy. When we
It's the
have,
board that approved, I mean, granted, the board flips is what you're saying. It goes from Republican to Democrat based on who's in the governor's mansion.
and I shouldn't have taken us down this rabbit hole. I don't really know why I'm taking issue with this, other than we've grown the registrar's budget by a bunch of percentage points, and now we're gonna do it again. And we're not solving the problem of having somebody there as a deputy registrar, when the 4 that have left weren't there long enough to even start the training process. And I don't think that hiring somebody full-time and getting them trained as a deputy registrar is gonna solve the problem.
Unless the burden of the job is so much that I wouldn't freaking want to do it for part-time either. I mean,
Maybe.
And I may be wrong, but I feel like that our registrar has the support of her previous board and existing board from what little I know.
Okay, well, you got,
Can we table?
Yeah.
well, we can't table that, but we can keep the appropriation for now, but
It's not enough to
change the budget overall.
change the budget 1%.
But do you understand, does that make sense what your homework assignment is?
I actually don't know exactly what you want to do with this.
Okay,
Well, we can take this, we can have this discussion.
we can keep going, but.
Yeah. I don't know what the,
So right now, no change to the appropriation line.
So it's in there and we could talk about it some other time.
I think maybe at our, maybe I'll do a little more homework to try to flush through this. And then at our next meeting in, what month is this, May? In June, then I can.
I guess what I've come to is it's not on the political side, it's purely on maybe the office dynamics. And it's not necessarily, it could be some personality related, but it's more about the workload and the truth of task, you know. And I mean, elections are probably one of the most important things that we do as a nation, and our contribution to the county is really important. So if there's some underlying other reasons why part-time is because part-time was really full-time and I wasn't getting any compensation for the full-time requirement. Okay, that's what I think we need to know. If there's other things at play, great. I don't see it from a political lens per se, but if the demands of the jobs or some of the other dynamics that are involved in there are causing people to leave after a short period of time, we need to understand that. And maybe that's just what it
I
is.
don't know that we had excellent reviews on folks. I don't.
Yeah, right. And I mean, they don't work for you. You know, so, and that's where I was thinking, well, maybe this would be a time for you to sit down with the electoral board and have a discussion about all right, why are these people leaving so quickly and what's the challenges here? Because they do a lot of stuff year round. I mean, with Tracy on that, there's something always occurring on the electoral calendar. You just pull it up on the Virginia election thing, leave all the other stuff going on, but they got to be ready for it. All right.
I think it's a need, I definitely think it's a
We'll
need.
keep moving. You okay though with where we're at for now?
The only question is, if say anybody in this courthouse, every time I've been in one of the offices, they're getting, except they, no, I'm just kidding.
They're what?
They're always busy. Is there someone in this courthouse that could do this and you take away from them to go be a registrar?
I don't,
I
Mr. Ivey brought that up. I don't know who has that capacity right now because I'm not sure.
I don't see it myself as who you can pull away from their job to move down to the registrar's office for a month. What can leave their job? I don't know. That's what I'm just asking the question.
Of course.
We'll keep moving, but that's the concern. Okay. All right. Parking lot. That number 4?
Mention one other part.
Okay, as you all know, we've had the library parking lot in the CIP for a number of months, years now. We have secured the donated land. Y'all remember that in the board meeting? And that's been recorded, so we have what we need to do this enhancement of our parking lot. But it has been a process to get to where that we are today. But we have, a few months ago, we had a meeting that Supervisor Fant was part of, I think, down at when we met. All of us down in the parking lot, the town and the county, looking at this project. And there was some enhancements even to that, with stair steps coming up into the park, town park that they're working on. Bottom line, we're basically the conceptual plans now, whatever the design work, hurt and profit. I told them I said we need an estimate of what we're talking about for this project to be realistic. And we had $150,000 in there. There have been enhancements made since then. That plus with inflation and everything else, that's nowhere near enough. That was just a good guesstimate back a few years ago. We're at $650,000 to do this enhancement to the parking lot, which we desperately need. I pulled into it the other day, and once you pull in with spaces behind, it's hard to get out there. I backed out all the way into the street. So there's a safety issue, plus there's we need more parking. We could go around the building. There's just a lot of enhancements that could be made. Plus the aesthetics, I think it'll look a lot better with the parking lot enhancement that we do here. And it would help the town project, stairs going up to it. They could be able to park there. And Miss Jones Collins, who was on the council of town, said that they would be willing to help with the stair part of it, up to sound like maybe half of the cost on the stairs, because they would benefit from that too. So there you have it. We're to the point where we're getting real close to we could go to construction with an RFP. And I guess at this time it's in our CIP, but not enough money. And so that's why it's on the agenda for the board to discuss. Do we continue to tread forward and try to see this project to fruition?
Is that an increase of 550,000?
What's the board's pleasure? That was a placeholder in the CIP years ago.
150.
150, yeah. That wasn't even a hurt and profit number or whatever. That was just a placeholder to put it in there. I'm not even sure who did that, but anyway, it was a placeholder in there for $150,000.
And it's still there.
And that's still there. It's in the CIP, but the cost now, we're trying, as we get closer to construction, we need to know what are we getting into. And that's a trued up cost of here's what it looks like it's going to cost to really do this
So
project.
650,000 you referenced.
Yes, that's it.
So if we take the 150 off, that's already sitting there, right? We're at 550 is what we're looking at. And
You were asking for an additional 550.
We're asking.
500K.
okay.
We had it in the CIP at 150, but we're saying now that we're getting close to construction, what is our cost?
Are you saying there's 150 in there already? Oh, there is.
There's 150.
So is that tie into the farmer's market? I think at one time I thought there was a plan that it would tie in somehow with the town park.
They will benefit from this parking lot. That there will be times that that's why the stairs are being put in, so that could go up to the town park. Supervisor Fant's on the library board. He's probably much more knowledgeable of the discussions, the interior discussions and all, and what the need is there. And I've just been trying to push this project along now for several months and years.
So the town's
Finally
willing to
got to
pay,
this point.
town's willing to pay half for the stairs that goes up to their park.
Half for just the stair cost. Yeah, not half of the project cost.
Right.
Just half of the stair cost.
And they said they might be willing, or, you know.
I don't wanna do that for surety but Miss Collins felt like that they would be good for half of the stairs. Now obviously there's 4 other members or how many are on council, but she felt like that would be a fair ask from us.
No, I think that parking lot's been a problem for that library ever since '73 when they built it. And so, the enhancement we're talking about will greatly improve flow. From a funding standpoint though, is there, obviously we have ARPA money, but we've talked about using most of that for communication infrastructure. Are there any other funds other than pulling it from other projects within the CIP, or what's the funding recommendation? Do we have it in the budget as it is right now, this additional 500K?
It would have to be pulled there's funds that we could support this with, but that would be a discussion that.
Well, that's the question is, where would it come from? Where would it come, this additional 500K?
There's an ARPA fund, there's another community development fund. That's 2 that come to mind.
What were you saying?
ARPA would be my recommendation.
The ARPA money gets given to us to do kind of these big projects that are gonna last for a really long time. What does that do to the other things we kind of already said that ARPA was gonna be useful?
Communications.
Yeah, we thought it was roughly 3 point something that we had remaining.
No.
What did we have remaining in ARPA that unencumbered? After, we encumbered some of it, but then we say communication infrastructure and childcare were kind of the next 2 big ones. But what was that total number? Do we have any flexibility with this 500K within that remaining money that we have for ARPA?
We do have some flexibility in the remaining that is unencumbered, but that would significantly reduce your investment for the future.
We have 2.1 or 2.6.
We have 1.7 encumbered, so that would increase it to almost all of it.
What do we have left? I don't know.
A lot of numbers.
Anyway, there's money there, and I'm glad to hear our finance director speak up. That would be where I would say take it. I think it's a very worthy project. It's been needed for a long time.
The town and the county will benefit.
I think the town and the county.
They will.
From this project.
Chunk of change. It's $500,000 that we're pulling from somewhere that
It's coming from communications. That's what's
So I don't even know why we would even continue with this discussion. If we're gonna take $500,000 out of communications, and that's one of our biggest challenges for our parking lot in town. Wow.
Well, that's one of the options. Is that the only option we have?
There's casino money that's coming in also.
Something for next year.
Yeah.
24. It's already.
We have so many priorities that go way above the parking lot and stairway up to this park that's long ways from being finished. And I know the parking lot's an issue, but wow.
I was just gonna say the stairs to nowhere.
Well, this is a stairway to nowhere. That's a good point. Can I use that?
Once I look at it, I'm not so concerned about what the town side of it. I've just been involved with it for a while. I look at it as, as part of public education that we all agree is really important. Better access to the library for elderly and disabled and young kids and all that stuff, and it makes it safer too. I'm hesitant to take $500K out of our communication infrastructure because that's a need that's going to address across the county. Not that the library doesn't. But from a prioritization standpoint, it's hard to say that we'll give up. John Fancy give up that money on communication infrastructure.
And these folks in town are our taxpayers too, even though they live in town, they pay county taxes.
Sure they do.
Well, that's, Mr. Chairman, that's why it was on the agenda. We are to that point, or do we go forward? Or do we table it, or?
Well, but I guess what I'm asking is, we've got ARPA money, and that's what we keep going back to. But CIP is funded each year, has got money put towards it. This is money that's been put in the CIP. The CIP's got a certain amount of money associated with it, all those projects that are in there, right? $150K for this one. But when you look at the projects that are in the CIP that aren't being funded by ARPA, or are there any funds in there that you can shuffle around that would get us to where we need to be?
Not to that magnitude.
So-
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, we had the 410 on the sticker that we were concerned about where that revenue was coming from. Now we're asking for $500,000 for a parking lot for about 10 cars. I think there's some concern. I'll let you speak to that.
In CIP fund, there's only $281,000.
Okay.
We have not been able to invest over the years as much in the CIP fund as we have been, so that it's dwindled. That's why I'm a little concerned that we've gotten a little bit used to the ARPA money. We've gotten used to that quote unquote free money. Okay, that was my fear all along. Right now we have 2.5 million in ARPA. In the current CIP plan, we have 1.8 encumbered.
1.8 of 2.8.
1.8 of the 2.5 encumbered.
So you got $700K left.
Goes quick. I mean, we're to the point we need to be spending it a little quicker. But is that where you wanted to spend it?
So if we didn't do this project, we only got 700,000 towards the communication system anyway.
Hold on.
Well, no, we've got 332,000 dedicated to tower construction. That would be part of that from ARPA.
I thought we said that, from ARPA standpoint, back when we, killed the Baywood project, that freed up a bunch of money, somewhere around I was thinking 1.2, but you're saying it's 1.5. That we basically encumbered the remainder of that, minus $200K for childcare. I thought we encumbered the rest of it towards communication infrastructure. I mean, I thought that was something that we had already kind of said, slapped the table on.
Okay. I didn't.
So we got 200,000 for childcare?
It's not.
In the early discussion when ARPA came up, and my recollection was that we had this money and we kind of prioritized what we wanted to do, and communication was number one and childcare was number two. You made the case for childcare for us to consider that, and that's kind of what I thought we had encumbered ARPA money to do, was about 1.2, I think was the number.
I think that was previously, maybe as soon as we found out we were getting the ARPA funding. Then last year, we moved all of our capital projects into and funded those with ARPA. Some of them we're going to have to reallocate or carry over that did not get carried out in fiscal year 23 to carry those over.
Is there anything per project can do to shave down that? I mean, it's a heavy lift right now for $500K.
I can go back and ask, and I think that is a possibility because I think this is a rough estimate just for budgeted. Right, that's what I asked for. I said, we need to know, we need to get closer to the number of what this project's going to cost for the board's consideration.
Good. Be okay with tabling this until we get a little more data.
Okay, that would require, if we table it, do you each have a copy of the
capital improvement projects that were presented at the previous meeting.
Yeah, different.
Okay, let me make copies.
Oh, what do you need?
Well, $500,000 puts us over that limit of 1%. So we will,
Well,
You telling me,
we're not.
no, we're talking about a different budget. This is a different, not a 100,000. This is the general fund. We're talking about a different budget right now.
Talking about CIP.
We're talking about the CIP budget,
Right, so what's the
the
five?
CIP projects.
You're saying we haven't appropriated $500K for the project. And right now, I think what I heard is that may not want to do that right now.
Okay, but I understood Mr. Smith saying that this is a time sensitive, needs to be done the next year. Did I understand that? And I may have misunderstood.
We were looking for the project to go to construction sometime between summer and late fall.
Oh,
But
And
the
if you
issue
table
is
it-
where are we gonna get the money? Where are we gonna get $500,000
So
to
if
do
you
the
table
project?
it, I think, Mr. Chairman, you're meaning to table it for this year because to her point, if we change anything after today, if we was to come back and say, let's do this project, and it's $500,000 project, you can only change it 1%, which is about 300,000.
On the CIP.
So we would have to re-advertise.
What do y'all think on it?
I can't be on board with spending $500,000 given the communication problems that we have. I love the library. There's gotta be another creative way to fix the parking lot.
That's kind of, I mean, I've been trying to get this done ever since I'm on the library board, but I'm having a hard time coming up with $100,000 given the other priority.
And I wasn't recommending, I was just putting it out.
No, I
I
got,
haven't seen the plan, but $500,000 for parking lot seems.
well, it's really $650. There's a lot of, so the real issue, the cost is the grading and the stormwater drainage and all that stuff that's tied into the town's park. And so there's a lot of dirt moving down there. We're trying to synchronize it with the town so that you only move dirt one time. But it's just, for almost $750,000 for a parking lot, and a set of stairs to get up in the town park. It's just,
that's pretty close to what the town needed to get their drainage in there. I think we're trying to bail them out.
no, this doesn't have anything to do with their drainage, but it does, their drainage and our parking lot are interrelated because their stuff, if it doesn't drain right, would flood our parking lot.
Then we'd be on the hook to fix
Then
it.
we'd be in a problem, so.
So getting back to if there's some money in here right now that we've got to account for because it would put us over the 1%, is that, you were saying that we would, if we didn't move on this, there's I guess, is it the 150 that's already in there that we have to account for that would put us over the limit to have a public hearing?
The 150 is in the CIP already. We could actually decrease the amount if you table this project for
So that 150 would have to be reappropriated somewhere.
No, it
Just
just
go
is
away.
something.
Just stay where it's at and be reappropriated later.
But it could be
How long
reappropriated communication or something else if we decide the parking lot's just not gonna get done. Okay. Ken, anything?
We can talk to Kelly and see if he can give that much out of his.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, I mean, you can check and see what, that sounds like a big price for the parking lot. And I don't know about getting a loan for it and doing it in 5 years.
It's a possibility. I think that would, and I don't know the rule, every piece of the rules on this, but that could very well, be a possibility through rural development.
Yeah, I think we need some other funding options, because right now that 3/4, that $650K is just, we gotta do better than that. It's a lot of money. I'm all for investing in infrastructure and things that are gonna make things better for people, and I'm a big fan of the library, but that's.
Well, and that could be a possibility of having some funding. Mark Klein with Urban Project, I mean, he has a good relationship with some of those too, so we could have funding. I even thought about going back to the town and see if they could up the ante a little bit.
I think we just need a better funding, we need some better options other than ARPA.
$550,000 could build a new library somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of free money. And so anyway, all right.
Well, and I, just on the light of that, listen, I don't think we should be entertaining more debt for the county. Kid's gonna run out here like a burnt rabbit. And we're gonna be paying that bill, and then he's gonna be in here arguing with us why his taxes are so high.
Just wait till I get on the podium side of this.
I know, that's where we go with that.
Do keep in mind that this funding is government funding with a very, very low interest rate, and we could match that. And we've done that. That's how we bought the sheriff's office, and the name of the building escapes me.
Yeah, it's grub.
Thank you, the Grub Building. And we have done that with some water projects as well. So we've had success in the past in doing that.
But we just said that. I would like some options. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, those are taxes.
Okay, anything else?
Last one is the PSA. We talked about the PSA,
Yeah.
part-time position. You asked me to kind of, get a little bit of information on that. And, so
This is the PSA budget.
it's PSA budget. Well, I think one of the discussion points was, do we have the revenue to cover that position right now? And the answer is,
Not really.
Okay.
Not really.
So unless we raise rates, we can't afford the position.
well, it's a little,
Well, not really doesn't mean no. It just means it's gonna be close.
It will be
this year will be really close.
very, very close. So close that I have actually budgeted a transfer from the general fund into the BSA fund if it is needed. It is that close. We've discussed, am I working on you?
No, we're good.
Okay. We have discussed, when to do another rate study, if water rates need to increase to be able to offset the growth of the water system. With what we're hearing from our suppliers of water, we may, if we do that in the fiscal year 24, we may have to turn around and do it again in fiscal year 25, depending on what those rate studies are coming at us from our suppliers. So with the recommendations, we have prorated all of the salaries. Each of our positions in the water program are dual positions. The director, we have him in as about 10% PSA. The engineer, we have about 55% PSA. We do have included in the numbers that you have in front of us, a half-time, part-time person that we do think we can afford. And then, of course, with salaries and benefits and that sort of thing included, as well as the various stipends that are involved. So we do think that it is affordable for 1 year. As at halftime, it may could increase, but it is time for being able to take a look at those water rates within the next immediately, as far as what are our water rates, are we actually solvent in that particular fund, and then for future, what are our rates from our
So
suppliers?
the recommendation is to hire the temporary person.
Let me give you a list of items that he sent me. I had to sit down and talk.
I understand, I mean, I think the PSA board kind of understands what they're after. Is that the recommendation?
Yes.
Is
Right.
to
Yes.
bring the part-time.
I've got a question, and this probably is not a very bright question, but the 46, is that part of what we're putting for the EMS position, or is that?
This
I'm sorry?
PSA.
Yeah, I know PSA, but Paul wears two hats, right? And
That's only 10% of his position.
this is 10% of his position.
No, 10% of his position is only 7,000.
Okay, because I see a salary for 46 and a salary for 21.
Okay, the 46,000 comprises 10% of the director's position, 55% of the engineer's position, and 100% of the board stipend.
the half-time position. The part-time salaries is half of a position for a part-time person. Does that help?
Yes, it does.
Okay, good.
Any other thoughts? Everybody good with, don't think we need a motion, it's in the budget, right? Everybody okay? All right, what's next? You need a motion to approve this recommended budget for advertising?
Yes, please. And do know that you will see additional, like, the DARE fund, the EDA will approve those as a blanket. If it's not appropriated, it won't be spent, but you will see that in the advertisement.
You said the DARE fund, the EDA, is that it?
DARE fund, EDA, capital improvement,
And-
ARPA.
The ask that you guys discussed last meeting for the communities, organizations, can I get a copy of those?
They're right here.
Well, I need this.
Sure, I'll print one off for you.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve this recommended appropriation for FY 23-24?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion, and a second to appropriate $28,990,946 for county budget FY 23-24. You need roll count. This is just for advertising stuff, right? So we have a motion, and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4-0 vote. That's it. Anything else, Mr. Administrator?
Nothing for me, anything else?
Motion is there.
So moved.
All in favor? Thanks, staff.
This is it. You could stretch that one
Yes.
out.
Absolutely.
Nothing played.
For sure, you could approve my $500,000.
Played.
He's like Keith Leatherman wanting $40,000 water supply.